Today, I am delighted to introduce you to a group of three amazing women who have joined forces to form an all-female production company called Three Left-Handed Women. They met through the Women's Film Festival in Philadelphia and have gone on to become a dynamic trio in the production world. They're currently working on a TV series, a feature film, and they continue to lift female filmmakers' voices through the Women's Film Festival in Philadelphia, which is now in its 8th year. You're going to love hearing their stories, so sit back, grab a drink, and welcome Susie Nash, Fong Nguyen, and Diana Hall. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I know it was a little bit of a challenge trying to coordinate our schedules, especially because there's three of you, and it's just, I'm so happy to have you. I had spoken with Monique Impagliazzi. We had spoken about, her work, and I know that you're collaborating together, so we could talk about that a little later on in our conversation. But I really would love to hear from each of you about how you got into this business, and then how you met each other. How did you form this alliance? Because you're all rock star women. I love it. In your own right, you're independent filmmakers. You're running the Women's Film Festival in Philadelphia. I mean, there's so much that you've all tackled, and I'm just so excited to hear about it. Susie, why don't we start with you, and then we'll hear from everyone.
Sure. Well, started out wanting to be an actor. And so I went from my Radnor Actors Workshop in high school, which was actually a very innovative workshop for high school things. We did things like the Children's Hour, which was pretty unheard of for a high school group to be taking under their wing. And then went on to Emerson College, where I stayed for a little bit and then fell in love for the first time with a woman and forgot what school was. But then continued, moved back to Philadelphia and continued acting and directing in community theater, and then was running camera at Channel 57, which was one of the local stations here. And then from there, got involved with film festivals, and was the person who was doing programming all the women's films for what was then the Philadelphia International Gay and Lesbian Film Festival. Acted in films, directed a couple of small films, and then kind of fell into the Women's Film Festival, a little by accident, a little bit by Fong's mechanisms, and ended up going to see one of the screenings and thinking, wow, this is cool. I didn't know there was a Women's Film Festival like this. I should volunteer.
You're also a writer.
Yes. So
you've touched upon so many areas in the creative world, and I guess you combined everything. Are you writing the scripts for your films as well?
Yeah, for this, I definitely do some writing, and then as you mentioned, I write for the Philadelphia Gay News. So I have a column, an award-winning column that's been running every week since 2005. So
Amazing.
So I get to profile people in the LGBTQ plus community every week, and everything from the cute UPS driver who serves the gayborhood, to, just yesterday I did Anthony, the person who's the chef on Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. And so it's a lot of fun. I get to meet all sorts of people, both people who are, and people who are kind of unheralded in the community.
It's incredible. So Fong, tell me, how did you rope Susie in?
Oh boy. So actually it was after the first year of the Women's Film Festival. And I had just recently stepped down from as the festival director for the Philadelphia Asian American Film Festival, when I met Blaine Marie Williams, the co-founder of the Women's Film Festival, by accident as well, in a bathroom at Landmark while we were both drunk. That's how it got started. And it's more so like I didn't realize how bad women had it in Hollywood until we started the Women's Film Festival. And even in the first year when we had the panel discussion, just hearing someone in the audience saying like, and she was a female, she said, "Hi, I'm an actress. And I just want you to know this is so important to me because in a recent audition, I almost got taken advantage of. And I was just like so heartbroken that this was still happening, and that it was like very much under the covers, as we all know from the Me Too movement. I only wanted to more so like consult for the Women's Film Festival, but Lee Marie had gone to Chicago to pursue directing and things like that. Then it was only left with me and whoever else was left in the team. And one of the team members was just like, you really have to keep this going, because I also just experienced some misogynistic things on set. And if you don't keep it going, it'll die. So I was like, all right.
You felt a responsibility.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. I'll just do it. And I'll do it how I know how to do it. I'll put submissions up on Film Freeway, on Without a Box at the time. Now we don't have Without a Box. And I'll just do what I know, and then I'll look for venues. For year 2, I basically put the venue all on my credit card, and then Susie came along, and Susie had told me like I do programming for the women's portion for QFest, and now it's QFlix. And I said, "Oh, you do programming?" And so I kept in touch with her, and she said, "Yeah, please invite me to the Women's Film Festival." I don't know. I just had a feeling like that she wanted to really participate, and this is something that she'd really want to support. So, it's just like one thing led to another. And I kind of like said, well, I do need help with watching the films and helping picking the programming, because it takes a lot of work. It's a lot of time to watch through 200 plus submissions. I think we're already past 200 this year. The most that we've gotten was probably maybe close to 400, 500.
Wow.
In the 1 year. And so it was hard, and it's hard to watch all those films and kind of make sure that you're being fair in judging all the films. And so I just was like, yeah, we'll make you the programming director.
Now, were you working full time in production as well? How did you get started, and what led you to the point of even you created the Asian Film Festival in Philly, or you were just part of a group?
I was so I did theater in high school, and I started to have an itch to do theater and acting. I was a minor at Temple University for theater, but there wasn't a lot of parts for Asian Americans to practice on stage with. I mean, the place that we had to audition for Temple Theater, it wasn't made for people like me. So I've started volunteering for the Asian American Film Festival because it was something I believed in. I was like, maybe if I had more of an opportunity, I would have kept going. 1 year, they asked if anybody wanted to volunteer on staff, and I went for it. At the time, I was like, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can volunteer on staff. They asked me what I would like to do. I helped kind of organize their fundraiser, silent auction, and a couple of the after parties. After that first year of volunteering on staff, the festival director at the time wanted to step down, and my name got brought up. And I basically kind of went from the mailroom to the CEO position. And then I basically was trying to, be the conductor for a train that was already running.
What an education that was, though, right? I mean, talk about getting thrown into the fire.
Yeah, I was working full time and still going through my master's program at the time. So it was a little tough. And, but I just wanted to learn so much. I wanted to take the opportunity to just challenge myself. And I felt like it was meant to be that's why I went for it. And then after a year and a half, I realized it was a lot of work, and I got some pressure from, my family and friends saying like, you're doing too much. So I stepped down, but I was still on the board. I still cared about the organization. I still cared about helping minorities and anybody who is marginalized have a voice. So that's really how I got into it. And then it wasn't until the Women's Film Festival where I was like, maybe I do want to do filmmaking. Maybe I do want to do films and produce films. I never had that desire before. I always had the desire for acting. It just kind of changed all of a sudden when I kept seeing other films on screen. And yeah, I was like, maybe I have some stories that I would want to tell.
And then how did you meet Diana? Let's bring Diana into the conversation because she's the third left-handed partner. The Women's Film Festival has really been the common thread that's connected you. So welcome, Diana. Let's chat a bit and hear your story as well. And it's interesting how you've all your lives sort of are parallel and now you've come together.
It's been wonderful being together, the three of us. And I don't think Susie and Fong can say this, but the two of them have really been mentors for me throughout this whole journey into the film world. I really didn't know anything until I met them. And as you can tell, they are all about supporting women. So yeah, I was a senior at Villanova, was graduating soon. I had a concentration in theater. I knew that I really loved the film and theater world, but had no idea how to get involved. And at the time, my husband, Wes Hall, was filming his first feature film. And he also kind of stumbled into the film industry. And so at the same time, we were both navigating how to get into the industry. Wes had a meeting with Kayla O'Donnell, who's been a part of the film festival for a while, as Fong said. And I happened to be at that lunch meeting and was talking to her about how I really wanted to get more involved, but I didn't know anything about anything really. So she was like, you have to come to the Women's Film Festival meetings. And she was like, this will be the perfect group of women. They're so warm and inviting and very knowledgeable and want to help, always are looking for an extra pair of hands. And yeah, so she invited me to come to one of their meetings, and that happened to be at Susie's house, which is not what I was expecting. It felt like I was hanging out with a group of girls. There was cheese boards and drinks, and we were all sitting around the couch hanging out.
As it should be, right?
Yes, it was a very warm and welcoming place to be. And I
love that.
And that was, I believe, in 2017 or 2018. And so I've been with Susie and Fong ever since, and they've been the best.
I find it so interesting that all three of you really had an interest in acting. I think people don't realize that there are many, including myself, who spent time in theater, on stage. I sang in a band. There are many of us who are multi-talented, I would say, or, have these aspirations. And I love the fact that that is a common thread for you. And it probably offers you a lot of insight when you're working with talent as well, in the field. So the three of you are connected through the festival. When did you say, I think we have something special here and we have some special stories that we want to share?
I mean, I'll jump in first. I think one of the things I love short films and the short format. I think when somebody does it correctly, it can just be magical. You can tell these amazing stories in, anywhere from 3 to 15 minutes. And it's an art form that I think is very underappreciated. So we had a lot of amazing short films in the festival. And we were thinking originally, how can we find a way to find another place for these films? So we started with the idea of doing some compilations. As we were doing that, I got a call from one of the filmmakers who had a short film starring Sherry O'Terry from Saturday Night Live. And that was Monique. And she was telling me about this feature film that she has written and was asking my advice on ways to, get it produced. And I said, well, we just happened to have started a company, Three Left-Handed Women. Let's talk to the other folks about it and see if we have any interest, if they have any interest. So brought it to the group and to Wes, Diana's husband, and everybody was in on it. And so we kind of put the short film compilations on the back burner. And then Fong also can tell you about, we also were approached by someone else who'd also been part of the film festival, who had screened a film, who was working on a short episodic pieces. So that's the other thing that we're producing right now.
But the impetus for the three of you to join forces and create this company was out of the need you felt to lift the voices of female filmmakers?
Absolutely.
Or was that really the crux of that decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all came in together.
For sure. And I knew that I don't want to speak for Susie and Fong, but I knew that I wanted to do more within the industry. And I wanted to align myself with Susie and Fong. And so I love the Women's Film Festival. I know this is not the same for Fong and Susie, but for me, it feels like minimal work all year round. And then a few months leading up to it, it's a lot. And then during the festival, it's crazy. And so I wanted something I could work on with them throughout the year and really feel like all three of us had ownership over that process. And also too, like, maybe we can make some money. That would be nice, right?
Money's good.
Yeah. So I love doing volunteer work and will always continue to do that. But I also want to make a career for myself out of this. So yeah, I think for me, it was always, working with Susie and Fong, that was very important to me. And also being a voice for women and doing things in a fair way. We always want to work with people and have them feel like we are taking care of them and are there to help them. So those, that was definitely the thought behind it, but also, we got to hustle a little bit too.
Right.
And the idea behind that is that, we're making money so that we can produce more work, because if we don't spend on, I guess, I don't want to say like our own, but spending money on or supporting people that we want to lift their voices up, we can't really rely on Hollywood to do that for us. And so I think we're very much trying to lean towards this autonomy that women have and non-binary and marginalized groups have been seeking for, so that we're not so reliant on mainstream media and Hollywood. But everything happened very serendipitously, very naturally. We were just meeting casually for dinner at Diana's house on like a monthly or whatever basis. And suddenly like things just kind of clicked for us. And so we kind of went with the flow, just like how we all went with the flow with things, with the Women's Film Festival and whatever projects that we had in front of us. And I kind of feel like it's meant to be, and that it was, and I feel very good about our work that we do, because I feel really, because we do try to pick projects that have a lot of promise to them, have a lot of rich stories, a lot of diverse characters, but is kind of the change that we want to see as well. Of course, we are open to a lot of different type of projects, whether film or TV, episodic, and but that's what I like about our group. We're open, but we have structure of some sorts of.
We have a Friday social media post called Female Filmmaker Friday. And it was for this specific reason, is to lift voices of filmmakers who, maybe this isn't the right word, but are somewhat marginalized, right? Because their voices aren't being heard. And I've had multiple conversations with DPs and directors and producers, women that have really felt that, they walk out on set and they're the only female on the set.
Yeah.
And they basically have difficulty even getting interviewed for a position because they're just looked at differently. Susie, you were talking earlier about the statistics. I mean, they're kind of staggering.
Yeah. So I was looking at a couple of studies. The Center for the Study of Women in Television and Film said that, I think this is 2021, women comprise just 18% of directors, 19% of writers, 25% of executive producers, 31% of producers, and 7% of cinematographers. So, which is crazy. One interesting thing I just read, they were speaking about reviewers, and let's see where it go. It's in people who are reviewing films, which is of course very important to those.
Of course,
men comprise 69% of the viewers, so they beat us by more than 2 to 1. And non-binary were like 0.3% of reviewers. So the statistics are pretty abysmal, and so that's one of the things we want to do with this company and with the film festival is get some of those voices and some of those stories as well. Because, when you have different voices, they're telling stories that we don't normally hear. And sometimes those people, need a little propping up. Sometimes we have projects that come through that are not necessarily the best from production values, but they're telling a story that hasn't been told before. I think of one film that was about colorism in the Indian community that we screened. Different subjects that don't normally see the light of day. And both the film festival and through this production company, we're able to shed a little bit of light on some of those things.
Do you feel that you have more objectivity or a more open way of seeing the world because of the work that you're doing? You've met so many diverse people. You're hearing their personal stories about their own struggles with trying to break through. I mean, we're talking about breaking ceilings, right? And women, you hear that term thrown around a lot. And there are some women, Barbara Walters, who passed away this year, certainly carved a path for all female news broadcasters. So do you see yourselves in that light as well?
Those are big shoes to fill.
I was going
But-
to say, I'm not saying
you're filling Barbara Walters' shoes.
That's a lot of pressure. That's
I don't think Fong and Susie can say this about themselves, but I see them in that light for sure.
And Diana. You have to include yourself, Diana. You have to.
I see all the hard work that Fong and Susie have done with the Women's Film Festival, how they've dedicated the past 7-8 years to the festival. And one of the things that the festival does is we have 2 filmmakers brunches every year, and that is for directors, producers, talent to come in, and we can have this like really nice, intimate brunch with them. And that is definitely like what you were saying. We meet all different types of people where it is very eye-opening that things are not just, we kind of live in a little bit of a bubble. And when you have someone sitting across from you who's from a completely different continent or just has a very different life than you, it is very eye-opening. And so, Bong and Susie are definitely, they're breaking glass ceilings for sure.
Do you ever get negative feedback from people who are outside of that world, men in particular?
On occasion, we did have one film that we screened called This Changes Everything as our opening night. And it was sort of about misogyny in the world, but especially in the film world and in media representation. And so we did have, some guys who afterwards were like, man, I feel like they were just beating up on us the whole time. But I will say on the flip side of that, we've had a number of men who come and who have volunteered for the festival, who we have regulars who come every year and, have been extremely supportive. So for the most part, it's been more positive than negative. And what's interesting is to see how things have opened up in terms of people realizing things that they'd never thought of. And one of the little letters I wanted to, I think before we got on the air, we spoke about when we screened the film, This Changes Everything. I got an email or text message afterwards. And the person wrote, "Hi, Susie. My friend asked me to send you a quick message about my impressions about the movie This Changes Everything. It actually had a very big impact on me. I'm helping to raise my 4-year-old grandson, and we watch a lot of cartoons and other programs geared for young children. I barely noticed the lack of female characters, but this movie made me realize about the lack. I told my daughter about the movie, and we agreed that we would still let the little boy watch his favorite shows, all male-dominated, of course, but we would also have him watch shows with strong female leads. We want him to see strong male and female characters to help us combat the toxic masculinity that we see in young men today. I mean, it's a shame that it starts so early in life, but because of this movie, I'm committed to making this change in my family. I'm so glad I saw the movie." So,
wow, that's incredible. What a moving letter that is.
Yeah.
And it makes you really, it validates, right? What you're doing is really making a shift in people's perception and understanding that maybe it's not ignorance, right? It's just lack of exposure.
Exactly.
And I just want to add, I've experienced a lot of men who are supportive. Wes and Dave, which is from Elride. Wes is Dana's husband. And even people like my business partner for videography, Hugh, has been supportive, and they all have daughters, and they want their daughters or nieces to have equal opportunity and things like that. But there was this one documentary that I absolutely loved in the Women's Film Festival in the second year, and I put it for opening night. It's called Man Islam, and it talked about 5 men in the Islam faith in the Middle East that were actually strong supporters of female rights, were feminists. And one of the things that one of the gentlemen said was, I fight for female rights because freeing them frees me. It frees me from the toxic masculinity, from being something that I'm not, and that it frees me from this mold, this kind of box that society has put me in. And so that I always think about that. It's like allowing people to be who they are not only frees, supporting them doesn't always just free them, but it frees you from the box as well. And if society could just see that, we could all be more authentic, our authentic selves. That isn't harmful to society. So,
and that's one of the reasons I asked that question, because somebody had said to me, well, why are you only saying, Female Filmmaker Friday? It's about lifting their voices. But for me, again, to your point, I've had many, male associates, partners who have lifted me, who have put me out there for projects that maybe, only guys were up for, to be the director or the producer who was being contracted or something. And they would send those people to me and invite me to certain meetings and gave me more opportunities. And so I wanted to bring that point up because, not all men are, discounting all of our abilities and our creativity. And I would say even more are not. Even when you look at the Women's March, you saw there were thousands and thousands of men out there supporting their family members, their children. So I'm glad, that's really why I wanted to talk about this, because this is not about male bashing. This is about having an open dialogue about, the situation of what the reality is. But the truth of what Susie said is there's still a huge gap.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
How do we change that?
And I will say too, with the Women's Film Festival, it's not an all girls club for sure. I mean, Fong and Susie have always invited male supporters into, when I went to the first general meeting to volunteer at the Women's Film Festival, there were guys sitting on that couch who wanted to volunteer their time. And then with films that are submitted, the films need to be for, about, or by women. So, we get a lot of, male producers or actors or directors. There just needs to be a female element within the movies that are submitted. So we welcome that.
Thank you for sharing that, because I don't know that everybody is aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Actually, one of my favorite stories was from the first year that I was programming. There was a film that came in, and it was about war, and it was about two men in the middle of a war. And I don't remember if it was Vietnamese or Korean or something along those lines.
Yeah, a Vietnamese soldier and an American soldier.
Yeah, and the two of them fell into a foxhole, and they didn't speak the same language, but through body language, and one seeing the inside of the other one's helmet where he had pictures of his family. And they start to develop a relationship, and they realize they have to rely on each other to get out of the pit. And so the Vietnamese fellow gets prompted up by the American. And as he gets to the top and he reaches in to help pull the American up, suddenly he's surrounded by American soldiers who start screaming at him. And when he doesn't respond, they shoot him. And the American soldier's like, no. And it was a very powerful film, but there were obviously no female characters in it. But it was a female director, female producer, female stunt coordinator, female cinematographer. So I programmed it. And that filmmaker told us that not a single other women's film festival would put her film in it because she didn't have any female protagonists. She's now become a great friend and has submitted every year, and has been one of our biggest cheerleaders as a result of that. So, I think we try to keep with our festival, our criteria semi-broad. And again, that's letting other voices and different types of voices being heard in the festival.
What do you see as your biggest challenge moving forward with the festival and continuing to offer these opportunities?
Money.
Money helps a lot of things.
Anne will be the first one to tell you. She's always our biggest cheerleader, or the one who always reminds us, let's ask her
to make money. Yeah, because it takes money to make productions. It takes money to get the actors that you need for these films, especially if you're trying to compete with Hollywood and get distribution. And and we also have to live. So we all have other jobs that we do. And so it's really time and money. Time, because you need a lot of time to think, to strategize, to have meetings, to plan, and money to live, as well as to help produce these films and TV shows. So that's our biggest challenge, but we're getting through it, and hopefully our hard work will eventually pay off.
And exposure, I think, also, where the more people who hear your story and what you're doing. So the film that you're working on, can you tell us a little bit about that, or is it top secret?
So it's a little top secret. But yeah, we're working on a Christmas movie. We're working on the title still, so I'm not going to share the title yet. But yeah, so we're in the financing part of our work. We're looking for financing, again, money. If anyone has money, we always will take money. But yeah, it started off as just like a really feel good Christmas movie about a woman and a man. And then, we decided to,
not we,
I decided, I was like, why does this have to be about a man and a woman? Can't we make it two women? I really love Christmas. I love watching Christmas movies. I watch the same Christmas movies every year. And my want for this was to have it be a movie you can sit down with your family and watch and have that really warm, fuzzy feeling, and it be two women. And it doesn't have to be this like super sexy lesbian Christmas movie. It can just be, a Christmas movie that you enjoy watching. So yeah, I didn't say too much about it, I don't think, but Susie, if you want to jump in. Susie brought the project to us, and like Susie said, we're working with Monique on this, and she's been great, and her writing partner is April, and both of them have been just such fun to work with.
So first of all, let me tell you, Diana's nickname is becoming the flipper, because we will come to her with ideas and she's like, I like that, but what if we did this and like completely flipped it? So that's part of her reputation. Also, Diana is I think you're, in terms of the production company, and we all bring different strengths. Diana's been the organizer. She's the one who keeps us on task and keeps this whole thing running, because I think I can get certainly flighty and be involved with different things, and Diana's the one who's been our rock in terms of like, okay, this is what we need to accomplish. Did you get your part done? Did you do this part? This is what I have to do, and has just been the key portion of what we're doing is keeping us on track, as well as adding the creative voice to it as well. In terms of this particular project, I actually had a conversation with somebody about this last night. And I was saying that within the LGBTQ community, we have a lot of films that are about the struggle, about the fight, about different horrors that we faced, or different political mountains that we have to climb. And I said, you know what? One of the things that a lot of, as Dinah was saying, the straight community has sometimes you just need a chance just to have fun and have fluff and have light and things that don't necessarily have to have a huge, deep meaning to them. But there are just give you a chance to get away from the real world into a little bit of fantasy at times. So that's kind of what this project represents, is like that little breath of fresh air and a moment to detox from all the struggle that that all of us as LGBTQ people, as women, as left-handed folks, have to face every day. So that's sort of our emphasis with this project.
Where do you see this company progressing to? Are you looking at other projects together? You were saying earlier, you do other types of work, just not making films, corporate, commercial. Tell me a little bit about what else you're working on.
We're also working on a TV series that's going to start production on Tuesday. And so Fong brought that to the group. And so Fong, maybe you could share a little bit about that, since that one's, really close to your heart.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. Like, yes, to the Women's Film Festival, I keep in contact with a lot of filmmakers and stuff like that. But there was this one in particular individual who, Jenna Lamb, who for whatever reason in our life, we kept bumping into each other. And we, it started off with us having the same voice teacher, to us being on the same short by accident, to finding out I worked at Temple and seeing that she was attending Temple. So it was very serendipitous. And she asked me to audition for her web series at the time. And I auditioned. I said, okay, yeah, I do acting, and I'll try to fill this role. But the series was about it's a Vietnamese Cambodian type story in America, like being a Vietnamese Cambodian American and growing up and kind of like in the age of going to college. The woman, the main character, she's in college, but then she drops out, which is which is in the Asian culture is a major no. You don't drop out of college. And so it's that type of struggle of like, well, what is right for me versus what society says is right for me, and the struggles of being a child of an immigrant parents and things like that. And also navigating through, relationships, career aspirations, finding yourself. and the cast itself is diverse. And so when they made the production, I was actually impressed by how they ran the production. It was very professional for college students. When I got there was craft services, there was a schedule. They asked what I'm allergic to for food, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And a lot of the directors for each episode were women and minority women. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. So when they came out with the trailer, I did what anyone would do as part of the project. I promoted it. I put it on all my social media. It caught the attention of Diana's husband, Wes, and which was really cool. I was like, oh man, that's great. He's such a great man to want to support this. And so they connected with him. And then at the same time, we were at the beginning stages of the Three Left-Handed Women, and he thought this would be a great project to be under the Three Left-Handed Women with Elride. So that's how it got started with that.
And Jenna was the recipient of a Sundance Fellowship and Grant. And so, I mean, good job.
Amazing.
Jenna.
Yeah. And the other co-creator, Samantha Tan, who's also Vietnamese Cambodian, she has done work with HBO. Like she was part of the the Sex Lives of College Girls on HBO, and some other. And she did work on one of the seasons of, I believe, Euphoria. So it was really, they're really incredible, both incredible women who are going to go far with their persistence and ambition.
Where can we see this once it airs?
So that's where we come in. We're filming it. I know some people, they do a pilot and then they, get the financing to film the rest of it through a streaming service. But we're actually, we're helping fund this series. And then once it is completed, we'll go and shop around and look for distribution. So to be determined. We're not sure yet.
I think more and more filmmakers are taking that track right now because ownership of content is king, right? I mean, or queen. But, being an acquisition and still owning that content is so important. So I love that you're doing that. It also presents a lot of challenges, right?
Yeah, especially if you want a lot of creative control. You don't want it to be watered down or made to somebody else's vision that doesn't fit why you wrote the story in the first place.
And that's the nice part of it, is that you're making the decisions as a group, and it's not being dictated to you by a network or someone else, which is really nice. But again, it's challenging because of the funding aspect, as we all know. So How do you fund your projects? Do you use crowdfunding, grants? How do you go about that?
Probably all of the above. But just kind of to tack onto what you were saying about, the ownership of the project. There was a project I worked on a number of years ago for the E! Network. And it was sort of like a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air thing, but a reality show where we took Biz Markie, the rapper, and had him with a family, and we had an interracial family. So, and just sort of the cross-cultural aspects of that. Biz Markie, fun guy, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke. And the network got back to us and they were saying like, oh, no, what's this? Like, there's no cursing in here or anything like that. I'm like, he doesn't curse. I'm like, he's a rapper. How does he not curse? And then they wanted to change the opening for him, like getting out of bed in the afternoon, and he opens up the refrigerator and there's nothing but 40 cans of beers and all the stuff. And fortunately, the producer of the show, who was a friend of mine, who's the one who brought me in on it, just said, they're offering money on this, but I have to look at myself in the mirror, and I just can't do it. And, again, part of the reason why I worked with her, because I knew she was a person of good conscience. And she turned it down. We could have had, and everybody was saying, you should just take the money and then do your own show afterwards. And she just said, I can't do that.
Because you're also compromising your relationship with your talent.
Yeah. So yeah, so it does happen, and so that's why it's important for us to keep the ownership, as you were saying, of this project, so we can make it what we want it to be.
So I mean, I'm working on a documentary, and I know, I've taken money out of my own pocket to get started, looking at crowdfunding, grants, and things like that. Talk a little bit about, sort of the challenges of that.
There's so many challenges. With Ambitious, we were lucky enough to first off, like Fong said, that Samantha and Jenna really know what they're doing, and they are very resourceful women. So they had a very small budget for what they're doing, and was one of the reasons why we wanted to team up with them. It was very impressive what they did with what they had. And so that one, because it was a small budget, we were able to take, thank you to Wes and Dave, we were able to take some funds from L Ride Productions and put that into our project, because like we've said, it's an untold story. We want to be a part of sharing those stories. And we're hoping that we'll be able to, make that money back. So it's a little bit of a gamble, but worth it to us. And as far as grants go, the project we're working on with Monique, that's something that we meet once a week, and we look at grants. We also look at investors we can go to. And, when you're in this industry, it's a lot about knowing people. And so between the three of us, and especially because we've all done different things within the industry, and we've all worked within the industry, before Three Left-Handed Women, it's a lot about the connections we make and going to people and asking for help. And also the three of us have helped a lot of people in the industry just because we want to help. And so I think that when you're willing to help people out there, they're wanting to give back to you. And so, yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard. It's not easy. And we're just kind of trying our best to make things work.
We have a grant meeting right after this.
That's awesome. So I'm going to ask you this as a sort of a wrap up to what we've been talking about. A lot of the audience, a lot of our listeners are people, kids coming out of college, or people that want to pivot or have always dreamed of producing their own films. If you were giving advice to somebody who, I'm sure we've all heard this from many family members and friends and strangers. Oh, that you meet on the plane or something. Oh, you're a filmmaker. I have a great idea for a TV show, or, we've all heard that. So if you were going to give advice about stick-to-itiveness or resourcefulness, all these things apply. And I would love to hear your take on that, and give some tips to our listeners.
Oh, well, I'll jump in as a programmer. My advice is always like, do something, shoot something. It doesn't matter. You don't have to do Gone with the Wind, or the Titanic as your first project. Years ago, I was programming for Qflix and got a film. This was on VHS, which shows you how long ago it was. And it was called Here Girl. So popped it into the VHS machine, hit play, and the opening scenes ran. And then there was a woman on screen just sending out a law, and she went, "Here, girl." And this giant dog hit her, knocked the two of them over, and then the credits roll. That was the whole film. I laughed so hard. I was on the ground. I was like, that was just brilliant. So that got programmed. And it was about a minute. So it was like, listen, even people hate it. It's only a minute. So, but it got huge laughs, and it was just the simplest, silliest thing. So, I always say, just make something. You never know what's going to resonate. And once you get that name out and you go to film festivals for me are one of my favorite ways to travel. I've been in the film festival in South Korea and in Spain and in London and in Canada. And you get to network and meet other people and work on other projects. And I actually just found a little something in the cover letter from Cora, that director I was speaking about before. And she just wrote to us, I wanted to start by saying that submitting to the Women's Film Festival each year has been one of the greatest honors of my time as a filmmaker thus far. Attending the festival has given us networking opportunities to fellow filmmakers who've become some of our dearest friends and collaborators, and we've seen some incredible films and wonderful stories. So I always say,
beautiful.
Yeah, start by just making something and submit it to festivals and start out that way.
And how fulfilling that is to know what a difference you're making in these filmmakers' lives too. You're making a difference, and you're giving that level of support, even just, by giving them the opportunity. So, Fang, what would your tips be, or what would you give as advice?
Don't be afraid to fail. Just keep trying, because I didn't know if I could start a film festival off from scratch, but I tried and I did what I could. I did what I had to do to get it going, because I felt like it was really important. And I was scared, but I tried anyway. And it's from trying that I learned how to keep it going, how to keep it running. Some film festivals only last 3 years sometimes, and sometimes they don't even last past year 1 or year 2. And we're going into year 7, 8 because of the pandemic. We kind of skipped a year, but it's
That's
always
amazing.
Yeah, it's always a challenge. We were on a really positive trajectory, and then we had a setback with the pandemic, and now we're trying to get back up again. And it's just perseverance. I mean, and when people write about their stories, and do documentaries about their stories, I want them to think about, why are you telling the story? Why is this person having this dialogue with this person? And what are you trying to say, or what are you trying to accomplish? And try to see if you can make something that is effective, and that will reach the audience. Because my whole life has been about doing things I didn't know how to do until I just tried and do them. Just tried it out.
So no is not in your vocabulary.
There are some no's. I have to have some boundaries are good sometimes, but I can't speak for everyone, but for me in my life, I've had to learn what works best for me, and making decisions has always been best with listening to myself and listening to my intuition and gut. And I've made a lot of decisions based on intuition and gut. And, if you asked me, when I first started college, what my life would be like, I thought I was going to be a doctor, married, having 2 to 3 children, right? Having that picket fence, and none of that happened. And, but the life that I had thus far has been incredible. I've met so many incredible people, so many incredible women who inspire me every year. Just to see what they were able to accomplish. It's not easy. Making a short film is not easy. Making a full-length film is definitely not easy. And I'm just so always inspired. I think that's what kind of keeps me going, is that if I can get inspired by these women's stories, I think a lot of people would too. And I just want people to give them a chance.
I love that. And also you don't give up. It's easy to be disillusioned. And when you're told, oh, you'll never do that, it's easy to say, maybe they're right, and second guess yourself. So I love the fact that you give yourself that energy of saying, you know what, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to stick to my goals and my beliefs, and I know I can do it. Listen, we all get down, right? We all say, maybe I should go get that full-time job with that company, or, a production company. But you've done so much to, you've given so many filmmakers opportunities to share their voices, which is a gift. And I really admire that. Susie.
Yeah, well, I know we had to get Diane here, but I just want to jump in and say something to the filmmakers too, in that what you do is important. The stories you tell are important. Art, it takes sometimes a backseat in this world in terms of funding and things like that. But what you do and the stories you tell are really important for the humanity of the world. And always keep that in mind. It can get rough and it can be discouraging, but you are important and the art that you're making is important. And that's something for people to keep in mind.
Diana, your take on it.
So I would say volunteer time for sure. Look, just example, I 5.5 years ago volunteered with the Women's Film Festival, and now I am proud owner of Three Left-Handed Women Productions with Fong and Susie. And we are producing a feature film and a Sundance Fellowship miniseries. And so that was all from volunteering my time with these two fabulous people. And I think with that, you want to align yourself with people that you want to be like, you want to work with. Volunteering your time is so important. You're not going to just be handed everything. You have to work hard for it. You have to show up. You have to, support those who need supported. And in return, you'll hopefully get some of that support back. And I think it's really important who you surround yourself with. So those are my biggest tips of how, if getting into the film industry is really daunting. If you have no idea what you're doing and you want to get started, I would say volunteer your time. Yeah.
That's so important, because you're right. There are people who want to break into a new industry or aren't sure, or maybe they are or have been in commercial production or corporate communications, and they've always wanted to work in film. I did that. I had been a producer for 10 years in, commercial production, music video, news, reality TV, but I just had this burning desire to work on a film. And a friend of mine was a script supervisor. She was working on the film Money Train. She got me an interview. I ended up being a lockup PA. Okay. Going from like producer director for 10 years, I quickly realized that was not the career for me, but I was so grateful that I had the opportunity. I still want to make films, and I do make my own, produce my own and direct my own work, but it was such a life lesson for me. So you're right, being open to the possibilities and volunteering and putting yourself out there and networking with other people is crucial.
And I know, I'm not sure for Susie, but I'm pretty sure Fong and I both got into this industry by volunteering. Fong, is that correct that you started off ushering?
Yeah, I started off being an usher for the Philadelphia Asian Film Festival, just to get a t-shirt, and look where has it got me now.
Yeah. And same with me. I started volunteering with the Women's Film Festival, and I think that the first few years can be, you're like, where is this going? What is my purpose? What am I doing? But I think if you just stick with it and surround yourself with the people you want to work with, that things will come your way.
And even to the volunteer point is, be open-minded, right, to opportunities. Some, especially, young people coming out of school, they may have a little bit of tunnel vision. I want to be a director. I want to be a producer. And they just are kind of stuck in thinking of their life in one way. And being open to opportunity really can help.
Just being brave about it. And, just one more story about failure. I mean, and about goal setting is like, I kind of just, people were like, oh, how do you do it? How do you keep it going with any of the goals that I have? And I'm just like, I just chip at it a little bit at a time. And, a year ago, I got my real estate license, and I didn't sell any houses in the first year, and I was really ready to give up. And then here I am today, about to sell my first house, and I almost quit. So I was like, oh my God, I don't know. Usually if I'm not, I'm like, am I not good at this? Am I going down the wrong path? And I just gave myself, I said, I'm going to give myself another year, and and it happened. So, and I have another client, as well that I'm working with. So I think people tend to give up on themselves too easily. And I think that's the society culture that we're in kind of right now. It's like, if it gets just a little bit too hard, we just quit too fast. And sometimes when you get past that, if you just get past it, it might just be worth it. It might just be worth it. But obviously, if something is toxic, of course, leave. But if it's just hard, just try to stick with it for a little bit and see if it'll flush out.
And failure is part of success, right? I mean, there are some people who, hit the lottery and they put their first film out there, it gets picked up, and they're, on their way. But for many of us, failing helps us propel farther, try new things, say, well, that didn't work, I'm going to try this. Or let me speak to somebody who is already doing this. I think a lot of people get the idea that they want to do something in a particular way. And what I've learned through a lot of my own work for just building my own self-esteem and things like that, learning from other people is so critical. You don't always have to reinvent the wheel, right? And putting yourself in a position, and just as you said, Diana, volunteering is so important, because now you're putting yourself in a position of being with like-minded people who are also striving for similar goals. And I think a lot of people lose sight and they think, well, I'm not good at this. To your point, Fong, you're not good at it, I'm not going to do it. I had this with my kids, with sports, whatever it was. If they said in their head, I don't think I can do that, I'm not good at that, they would never pursue it. And we would just push them and push them. It wasn't always easy. It definitely was not always pretty. But at the end of the day, both of my kids, who are now, well, the one will be 23 in April, they both have come back to me and my husband and said, we're really glad that you put us in this position to learn something that we didn't think we were capable of doing before. And I think that that's just good advice. So I'm really happy that you pointed that out. So as we wrap up, is there anything that you want to add? And certainly I'm going to follow up with you. I have a documentary that I'm working on, and I would love to screen that. I'm not sure if it'll be this year. As you know, the whole fundraising thing is always a challenge. But I'm really looking forward to attending the Women's Film Festival, and we'll talk about volunteering. I would love to be part of it.
Wonderful. Yeah, and looking back to, as you were saying, giving tips to people, not just volunteering, but we also, not only us, there's also Philadelphia Women in Film and Television, and pretty much in any city, you're going to find organizations that are going to help women in films, or even just folks like the film office. There are panels and workshops that you can go to. Fong and I have both been on panels where you can learn. One of the stories that came out of that was, at one of the panels, I gave my little speech about that Here Girl film. And one of the filmmakers came to our festival this year and said, I just want you to know, I took your advice and I just decided to go ahead and do something. And she showed us her poster, which had the laurels from about 30 different film festivals that had taken her film. And I know Fong gave her some advice as well on what to do with her film. And, she's out there. We, after all of our films, we have Q&As, which have been really important. And just kind of to wrap up a little bit of the importance of having an all women's film festival for, by, and about women, especially during a lot of the Q&As, a lot of the women are able to talk about things that they're facing, the misogyny that they face, things that are particular to circumstances that we have to deal with. Again, one of the shows real quickly was one of the films we screened was about somebody who was sexually assaulted while being filmed during doing a lovemaking scene. And was very powerful. The woman who directed the film has gone on to become and I always forget the terminology for when you're the sexual
Intimacy coordinator.
Yeah. So there was a huge discussion after that film that went on for quite some time, even to the after party, about things that people had dealt with in their films. As director, we had one director who said, first scene, a sex scene, the actor she had completely had his pants off and his underwear. And she's like, whoa, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm a method actor. I have to, be all natural. And she was like, I think we're going to find somebody else for this part. So those are the things that, women as directors, as filmmakers and stuff have to deal with. And so to have a festival like this where everybody can talk about it, either after a film or at the after party or at the filmmakers brunch is part of why we do this.
That's great. I'm glad that you added that because there are these opportunities to meet other people across the country. And the other thing that you had said about going to the festivals, international film festivals, it's also a way to meet other people and learn about other cultures. If you're looking to distribute a film that you're working on outside of the US, it's important to understand the types of cultural films that they're interested in as well, and just having a better vision of what reality is for people. And I also think, and like my parting comment is, I'm definitely a flower child, and peace, love, and not war is my motto. But I feel that we're all connected. Our energy is connected, our lives are connected, and hurting other people, whether it's through sexual abuse, verbal abuse, or just discounting their importance, is such a disservice, because at the end of the day, we really are. I know it sounds cheesy, but I really truthfully believe that if you meet people in another country, you find so many similarities with, just like as a mom, I could meet a mom in another country and we're going through the same stuff, or a dad, you're going through a lot of the same things. So I love the fact that you shared that, because it's important that the people do have these other experiences that open up their world and their eyes.
Yeah. And to see we're not alone, not only with what we go through here in this country, but as you said, internationally, what women are facing here, they're facing and also to see how
sometimes worse,
and also sometimes better. In America, we kind of tend to think of ourselves as the golden child. And then, we watched, there was a film about the Netherlands, I believe, or I forget Iceland, which has more female politicians than any other country. And, the level of misogyny and things like that is completely, lower than ours by a huge percentage. So to see maybe we could learn something from other countries and other people.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I know everybody's moving in different directions and has a lot going on, but we are so happy to have had this opportunity to chat with you. We'll definitely bring you back on. I want to hear more about each of you sort of independently as well, but this has been really wonderful. And I look forward to sharing many more happy times with you and attending the festival. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.